Hey there, welcome to King Culture Podcast. I'm Luke, and that is Seth. It's great to have you with us today. Everybody talks these days, Seth, about they're so blessed. Man, I'm so blessed. And usually that means I got a new job or, something really worked out or, gosh, I've been on this great vacation. People don't really use hashtags anymore, but this used to be the whole thing, hashtag blessed.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about the blessed life. So is that kind of what we're talking about? More money, more great vacations, more
money,
stuff?
more power, more sex. That's the way it works. That's what blessed means.
Hashtag blessed.
Hashtag blessed. Yeah, the things that people apply that to, someone will do something immoral and it'll be successful. Hashtag blessed. And it's disheartening how a rich biblical word gets tossed around like a big nothing. And the word, so we're talking about the Beatitudes, which I had to look up, what does the word beatitude mean? Because I think people think Beatitudes just means this, but like that word came from somewhere. And
well, that's not a word that's in the Bible, but
Yeah.
it's a word that's used to describe a portion of the Bible.
yeah, but Beatitudes just means super blessed.
Oh, really?
It comes from the old Greek, it comes from the old word meaning beat, or the root of that is blessing. So
Okay.
Beatitudes can just mean the extremely blessed. So Beatitudes means the extremely blessed list of things. If you have these things,
okay.
you're extremely blessed. And then you get these Beatitudes, which are called, or the listings of the blessings.
Okay.
And these are the things that Jesus uses to kick off the Sermon on the Mount. And let's just read them for the sake of starting off reading them. So
This is Matthew 5.
Matthew 5, starting in verse 1, seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain. When he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
All right, so I got a question right out of the gate. Is it blessed or blessed?
It's funny as I start to read that,
Blessed are the poor in spirit? Or
every other
blessed?
context in your whole life, you say blessed.
Uh-huh.
But when you go to read the Beatitudes, we want to say, blessed are the poor, blessed are the... So it's either, I think.
Either way is okay.
I think if you want to sound...
It's not like Revelations, which is always wrong.
Yeah, I think if you want to sound more serious and religious, you say blessed.
Oh, okay.
If you want to sound like a regular person, you say blessed.
Oh.
But
Hashtag blessed.
hashtag blessed.
Doesn't have the same.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the same
It doesn't
thing.
work. It doesn't work. And so this is going to be our next sermon series. So we got a week on each one of these. And at a minimum, you first read it and it sounds counterintuitive or the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so Beatitudes means super blessed, but what does blessed mean? Well, the word this is probably good just to nail down, is makairos, which could be translated fortunate, happy, privileged, blessed is the way you could translate that word. Actually, in Eugene Peterson's rendering of the Message, he translates it as lucky. Lucky is the one. You think lucky and fortunate kind of go hand in hand, because he would say that in the modern usage, if someone says like, oh, I'm so lucky to be married to you. Like, you're not necessarily referencing kind of like an impersonal fortunate, but like what a treat it is, what a privilege it is.
So
Like,
not lucky in the sense of like just chance.
yeah, gambling lucky, but lucky like blessed,
wow,
fortunate,
this is really
privileged.
awesome.
It's a
Yeah.
privilege to be with you. And because he understood that word blessed sounds so religious that it sounds other and distinct, but blessed is a very ordinary word. Makairos is an ordinary word, happy. Blessed is the child at Peter Piper Pizza with an unlimited gamer card. Like there's just a happiness. There's a disposition of...
So in that sense, it's not wrong when someone's had a great vacation or they've gotten a raise or they
Hey, what a blessing.
have like a bunch of happy kids that go like, man, I'm so blessed. Like that's true.
It's absolutely true. But then you look at the rest of this list, and it's all stuff like you see these like phases in these things. And what I want to highlight is the difficulty of interpreting these, because the history from early in the church fathers through the Reformation up to modern time, there's big disagreement about how to interpret, how to package, how to apply these things. So,
Well, because not all of them on the surface feel like the kind of good life.
yeah, you go, blessed are the pure in heart. Well, duh.
That
sounds
seems
great,
right.
Obviously.
But blessed are those who mourn.
Seems like
happy,
happy
lucky.
are those who are sad.
Yeah,
It feels
right.
like a contradiction.
Yeah, totally.
Happy are those who are sad. Fortunate are those who are poor. I thought that was the less fortunate.
Yeah.
I thought it was unfortunate. And then you get into some of them and they feel less intuitive. Blessed are the meek. So meek is like quiet strength. They'll take over the earth, and it feels like there's a contradictions here. I thought it was the strong who take over the earth, but it's no, the meek who inherit the earth. And so you get into these debates about how what we know
When
is
you say you get into debates, it's not like most of us are having debates
church
about
history
this.
debates,
But
yeah.
throughout history, commentators and theologians have really broken these down different ways.
Yeah, so there's different ways of understanding it. I would say the first way would be the legalistic way, which is be this so you can get that. That's number one. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You go, okay, I want the kingdom of heaven, therefore I will become poor in spirit. So it's be this in order to get that.
Okay.
So it's if I do blank, then I will get blank. Blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. I want to be comforted, I better mourn. Blessed are the meek, for they'll inherit the earth. I want the earth, so I better become meek. I want satisfaction, so I'll hunger and thirst for righteousness. And so that way could be called the works way or the legalistic way.
Okay.
And
now, when you say legalistic or works way, that automatically pings me as like bad.
yeah, well, so that like with,
So maybe we'll come back to that, but I just like that is a very negative way to describe that approach.
yes, yeah, and
Like another way that would be less negative would be consequential.
yeah, or reap what you sow or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they call
anyway,
it, they
so
call it the
there's that
legalistic way,
approach.
which is like the if this then that.
Okay.
I want that, so then I'll do the if. And this is basically I'll do what the first part says so that I can get the second part.
Okay.
And that's what happens. That's how I do it. That's way number one. And that's the most common way. Like that's what's taught in most Roman Catholicism. That's what's taught in most Eastern Orthodox traditions. Like if you want to be godly, then you have to be godly. If you want to be with God, you better be godly. And so you must ascend. So they tend to quote, in Isaiah it says, "Come, let us ascend the mount of the Lord." And then Jesus here goes up on the mountain and then he teaches. Like he said, like, here's how you ascend the mount of the Lord. If you want to come up to where God is,
Yeah.
here's how you climb that mountain. You be this way.
Okay.
And so it's prescriptive. You do this, then you get that. That's the first way. That's I'll call it the legalistic way. The second way is we'll call it like the Lutheran way, which is that this law is designed for you to read it, feel like a pile of garbage, and realize you need Christ, right? And
Or you could say like the Ray Comfort way of the master kind of way.
yes, yeah,
Right.
it's wow. I am none of these things, and even when I try, I'm not good. And hunger and thirst, and you're self-aware, and you're reading these things, you realize I'm not that.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be cut off at the knees. Realize you need Christ. And the argument from that comes later on when Jesus says, "Unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees," that's in the same Sermon on the Mount, you will not inherit the kingdom of God. And so,
Which you're supposed to hear and go, well, my righteousness doesn't exceed theirs because
Yeah.
those guys are like paying attention to everything.
yeah. So if they're the most righteous,
Yeah.
and they're not even righteous enough, I better be. And so
And I can't be, so I need grace.
yeah, so the whole school of thought there is this is designed to make you realize how far from godliness you are, and so that you turn to Christ and cling to Him.
Okay.
So I'd call that the Lutheran way. The third way, I would call it like the Reformed way.
Ooh, I was hoping it was going to start with L
Yeah,
because we had
could.
legalistic and Lutheran. I was hoping we had
Yeah,
Anyway,
another
oh
L
well.
word. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
the Reformed way.
Reformed
but
way.
You're just
I'll come up with an L
you
word.
haven't yet showed us your cards of what you think, but you're explaining these ways of understanding throughout history. So
Yeah, so
the Reformed way.
The Reformed way is saying, if you are in Christ, this is true of you. So if you have come to Christ in faith and repentance, you are poor in spirit. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. If you have come to Christ, you have mourned your sin, and you'll be comforted by Christ. If you have come to Christ, you realize that you're dependent on Him, then you are meek, and you'll inherit the earth. And so
Okay.
this is yours in an increasing way. Live into who you are.
Okay.
So it's more of a positional promise that the disciples come to him and Jesus is telling them, because you're in me, this is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this sense, it's still a moral prescription, but not unto attainment, but unto like pleasing the Lord or something like that. So that. And then there's the patristic way.
Oh, baby.
Or
that really doesn't start with L.
Early church fathers. So the Augustinian and the Gregory of Nyssa has a big way about this.
Okay.
And these are the oldest interpretations, and they really have nothing to do with salvation per se. Like, whereas all three of those kind of have to do a little bit with salvation. Like, how do you know if you're saved or not? And how do you know if you're in or not? Saved, not saved. It's more just a recipe for how to progress in the Christian life. So it's more about the spiritual formation lens.
Okay.
And so I was doing some research about this, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So I want to talk about Nyssa and then Augustine, because I think this is interesting. And I think these things are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so show you the cards type of thing. I'm definitely a combo of, and there's one other school of thought after this we can talk about later, which is the hyper-modern one. But in Gregory of Nyssa...
Well, it's funny because so far, I mean, we didn't have the L's, but I do think of like some alliteration sound-wise of like, I think about it as, the first one was conditional.
Yeah.
The second one's impossible. The third one's positional.
Yeah, there you go.
And the last one's formational.
There you go.
And even as they all sound like...
Well, now that you said that, the word for the last one, I'm going to call it invitational.
Oh,
so there
okay.
you go.
There you go.
The invitational one, which is...
So conditional, impossible, positional, invitational.
Yeah. And invitational is...
And are you saying you think maybe it's a little bit of all the above?
I think so. So Dallas Willard is the one that people are probably most familiar with if they've studied this, because not a lot of people have written on it. But he argues that this isn't prescriptive at all. It's all just descriptive, that Jesus is gathering around a bunch of people who felt like they had no place in the kingdom of God. And Jesus is like, he imagines him kind of motioning to them and saying, "Blessed are you who mourn, for yours is the kingdom. Blessed are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness." And he says that the main message of this is the free availability of God's rule and righteousness to all humanity through reliance on Jesus himself. Okay. So he's just saying all the people who thought they weren't in on the basis of their life sucks, or on the basis of the religious system of the day excludes them, you're in, or you can get in.
So that's Dallas Willard. He's not a patristic. Right?
He's not. No, he's very modern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, for example, he says, the merciful, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. The worldly wise will say, woe to the merciful, for they'll be taken advantage of. And outside heaven's rule, that's true. But the merciful who are taken advantage of are included in the kingdom of God. Like, that's kind of the way he reads some of that.
Are you putting him in one of those four buckets?
He'd be invitational, meaning everyone's invited.
Okay.
Like, nobody's excluded on the basis of what their life has been like.
Okay.
Or whether they're materially blessed or not.
Okay.
So you're tempted to think, well, if God loves me, then I'd be more financially well off. And Dallas Willard is going, no, blessed are the poor.
Okay.
And so you can begin on this. But the Gregory of Nyssa one is the formational piece. And this is one that's kind of probably outside the box for Ironwood, but I think it's really interesting. And I'm not sure if I agree with it, but at minimum, I hope you'll agree that it's interesting.
It's worth maybe thinking about.
Yeah. So he and the fathers envisioned what they saw was like this kind of 3-part progression in the Christian life.
Okay.
Part 1, so this is like after you've signed up to be a disciple of Jesus, is the purgative or the purgative phase, where you're emptying yourself, renouncing the world. It's the putting off of worldliness. Then there is what's called the illuminative stage, where you're putting on and you're having eyes for what God has eyes for, and you're desiring the things of heaven in a greater way. And then
you're renewing your mind.
Yeah, the renewing of the mind. And then there's the unitive stage, which is where you become more like God. You become godly.
Okay.
You lean into your union with Christ such that you walk like he walks, and you talk like he talks, and you're becoming more godly.
So now I definitely see that as like a progression that people follow as they grow in Christ. But you're saying he's mapping that onto this.
Yeah, and so Nyssa, we had a discussion about the wisdom literature, and that's where they map that from too. So the purgative phase is Proverbs, the illuminative phase is Ecclesiastes. The unitive phase is Song of Songs.
Okay.
That's how they kind of thought through that.
Okay.
But Nissa sees that progression here. So he would argue that these Beatitudes are a pyramid, and there's a foundation, and you build upon them. So these aren't 8 isolated things, but these are 8 phases in growing in godliness and progressing in the Christian life into maturity. And so the foundation of the Christian life, the beginning of it, is blessed are the poor in spirit, right? Because that's like ground zero entrance. That is where you're going. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. They belong. To get in requires poverty of spirit. He calls it the kenosis, or the emptying of self-sufficiency. This is the foundation of all. Pride and self-sufficiency must be evacuated to make room for God. Just as Jesus Christ was poor in spirit, so also are we now poor in spirit, in the sense that he, kenosis, he emptied himself, took the form of a servant.
Okay.
I like that for one reason, because that's also the foundation of my masculinity pyramid, which is humility.
Yeah, I'm
So
saying,
there you
as
go.
soon as you said pyramid, I'm like, ooh, Seth's in.
I'm in on the pyramids. So then that's layer 1. Then after layer 1, the poverty of spirit, you seek to go to the next one, which is blessed are those who mourn. And this is called apophatic, or negative grief. The soul has seen its emptiness and now grieves the distance from God, both in the past and in the present. This is sadness over sin,
Okay.
sadness over the fact that you've been ungodly, sadness over good works left undone. And so first you go to poor in spirit, then you make room for God initially, then you compare yourself to God, realize that you have a lot, and you're comforted. And that's the comfort of grace. So first you get in, then you're hugged, basically. Is that how it works? And then, so that would be the purgative phase, is 1 and 2, is poverty and mourning. Then you get into the illuminative phase, and now you have blessed are the meek, and he calls meekness the taming of the passions. So it's strength under control. It's not willy-nilly. So meekness, he equates with
going back
self-control.
to our 7 Deadly Sins series.
Yeah.
It's kind of, turning from those things and turning to something else.
Yeah, disordered passions are now ordered and stilled. The soul becomes stable, not thrown about
Okay.
or tossed about by temptation. And so meekness is self-control. Meekness is not being tossed about by those things. And then after you have the self-restraint, the self-control of meekness, strength under control, then you go to blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, and he calls it the development of eros towards the good.
Okay.
So eros is like that kind of almost like eros is the erotic love, or the deep desire, or the lust for that which is holy and good. Like the itch that won't go away is now for godliness. He says the purified soul feels the awakened desire for God as the infinite good. Hunger is not a sign of failure, but the engine of epistasis, or eros towards God. The soul is drawn into what it cannot hold. And so there's this desire. So if meekness is control of the self, now eros is the ordering of the self towards what is good. So
You're moving toward Christian hedonism.
Yes.
Which we talked
That
about
was
recently.
Very Christian hedonism is right in there with that. And then the last phase in the illuminative phase would be blessed are the merciful, which is philanthropia, or philanthropy, which is participating in divine love. The soul begins to act from the divine compassion it has received. Mercy is not a human achievement, but the overflow of that union. The merciful receive mercy as they've received mercy. It's this kind of reciprocal thing. I'm now treating people like Christ treats me. So this is, I'm loved and now I love.
Yeah.
But that is after the desire for godliness, right? You see, and so then you get into the last phase, which is the unitive phase, which is what he says, like now you're beginning to be peak spiritual maturity, and blessed are the peacemakers.
I'll just say on the front end, the unitive language is really hard in light of having just in the last month or so studied and preached on union with Christ, which is by faith. Union with Christ is not something you achieve or eventually get to or progress to. It's something you have if you're in Christ. Obviously, your experience of the fullness of that union deepens the more mature you get. But so I'm a little hung up on that, but I'm trying to set that aside for now and go, he's not talking about this is how you get union. This is how you experience deeper communion, perhaps.
Yeah, I think probably kind of like in my sanctification sermon, you are saints, now live like saints.
Yeah.
Was kind of how I described it. Like,
you are united to Christ, live like you're united to Christ.
yeah, and experience the blessings of that on a day-to-day basis. And so now as you're getting to the unitive phase, you have blessed are the peacemakers. They're called sons of God. And sons of God, he argues here, are kind of like little gods. Now it's not talking about, their argument is that Matthew 5 is not talking about a doctrine of adoption, but it's talking about you're looking like little gods.
Okay.
Like my kids look like me a little bit. Now we're kind of like little
That's
gods.
how Gregory is seeing it.
Yeah, Gregory of Nyssa, yeah. And so the soul participates in the divine peace. Peacemaking is not a mere virtue, but an attribute of the divine nature now shared. You're building bridges between people. And you are now doing the work that God does, which is the work of reconciliation between people, and which leads to the final stage, which is suffering and persecution, which he calls it the recapitulation, which is you're now living Christ's life. Now people start to hate you. This is when people start to hate you. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And it's interesting how the first one is theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and the last one is theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so that's kind of like the inclusio of this,
Okay.
that you attain it through spiritual poverty, and then you must endure in it to go on attaining it. It's like is his idea. But the fully deified soul, this is Eastern Orthodoxy language here, which means like the capacity with which humans have to mirror the image of God. So that as godly as a soul can get on earth, share in Christ's own suffering, the first promise returns, enclosing the whole, not an end, but an eternal beginning. And so he sees this pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you're now doing what Jesus did, and people are hating you for it. And that's like the goal of life.
Okay.
And so it's interesting to think about these things as like building blocks on how you go up and up and the warnings they entail. So
That is interesting.
I'm not sure if I buy it, but I thought it was interesting. And that's like the earliest kind of framework we have for interpreting the Sermon on the Mount.
So, like all of that is fascinating. I mean, all four of those perspectives are fascinating, and all of them seem to have like, okay, you're not crazy for thinking it's that. But Jesus meant something when he gave this sermon, and that's some of, as we go through this series, what we're going to try to discern is, what did Jesus mean? What did Matthew think Jesus meant as he wrote this and recorded it? So, did he mean all of that? Or how do you even begin? I mean, so this is less about maybe the Beatitudes themselves and more just like a Bible study question. How do you figure that out?
Well, this is why I started researching some of this stuff, is I do think history of interpretation matters. And I'm not convinced that what we just read from Nyssa is even a history of interpretation as much as a creative application. Like that's kind of how he's thinking about it. Like he's building a spiritual formation framework off of these texts. But generally speaking, when I'm trying to rightly interpret scripture, my first move is to go, what's the history of interpretation? What have people said? How have they thought through it? And I think that's helpful to rightly orient yourself in the streams of church history and go, I'm not starting on square zero here. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who've thought deeply and wrote profoundly about these things. And so I want to try and wrestle with these things with the light of the rest of church history shining on it. And so I started with Augustine, and he has an interesting framework too, but it feels very speculative. And this is like where there's a movement now in online YouTube spaces where we have this like sense of reverence for the church fathers, as though like they're not men who can err. Right. And it's like Augustine's whole framework. I just want to share it with you real quick. So he takes the 7 Beatitudes, he chops off the last one because he sees it as like a summary statement of all of them, and he maps them onto the gifts of the Spirit in Isaiah 11:2-3.
Okay.
And he creates another pyramid thing where blessed,
another pyramid?
Blessed are the peacemakers, they'll be called sons of God. That connects to wisdom.
From Isaiah 11.
From Isaiah 11, at the highest level, because wisdom is discerning between, and peacemakers discern between. So that's the top of the pyramid. Blessed are the pure at heart. They shall see God. Understanding is the other one, which is seeing between things. So the pure of heart sees with a single mind. Understanding sees things where they are. Blessed are the merciful. Counsel are the two he connects right there. The mercy and the counsel is the capacity to see into the heart.
So hold on the pyramid. Are we building from the base
We're
up?
going top to bottom here.
So now we're going.
Sorry, I'm going.
Is it
top
an
to
upside
bottom.
down pyramid, or we're looking at the tip top first?
I just went top to bottom.
Oh, okay.
Just to make things complicated and
Great.
annoying.
For those listening, they're like, I don't know how to picture this in my brain.
Yeah. So then on the next layer down is blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. This is connected to might, because might or fortitude is the word he uses. Like hungering and thirsting is like work. You labor towards it and you have fortitude from the Spirit to do it. Blessed are the meek, connected to piety. Piety is not in Isaiah 11. It's only in the Vulgate, is like inserted. It's not in Hebrew. It's not in Greek. The Vulgate version of Isaiah 11 has piety in there. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it's there. But Augustine sees the Latin Vulgate and adds piety.
Okay.
Doesn't exist in the Hebrew or the Greek. So
he had what he had.
He had what he had. So that's like an example of like you're going to build a whole thing off a guy who didn't even know Hebrew. Layer 2, blessed are those who mourn, connected to knowledge, because he argued when you know God and you know your sin, then you will grieve over it. And the baseline of his pyramid is the seventh gift in Isaiah, which is the fear of the Lord, is connected to poor in spirit, because when you fear the Lord, you're poor in spirit. And so that's like his interpretation of it. And it's like, sure, maybe. But how you just, like, it seems like he read Isaiah 11 that morning and then read Matthew 5 and was like, oh, I can kind of make this line up. And he just kind of threw it together. Like,
so so it's great that obviously the history of interpretation matters. How much do you just go, what did the people sitting there at the mountain think he meant?
I think that's the whole goal. That's why you're trying to do this is
Well, the whole goal is really to go, what did Jesus mean? But one of the ways to that is to go, what did the people listening to it think he meant?
Yeah. Yeah. And
how did they hear it? Because they probably weren't pyramiding it to Isaiah 11.
No. And the part of the reason I share those things is because I do think there are some texts of the Bible that are easier to interpret and apply than others. And I do think I want us to consider what the church fathers have said, but not overly revere them, because they're fallible men who were doing the best they could with what they had, but they're really creative in the problematic sense, I think. Like, there's a sense in which like creative Bible teaching is good, and at a certain point we're like, you're creating meaning that's not there, if that's bad, and you're just kind of extrapolating unnecessarily.
Well, it makes, again, we mentioned the 7 deadly sins a bit ago, and one of the questions we asked when we were doing our episode introducing that series was, well, this list isn't in the Bible. Why would we do this if it's not in the Bible? And what we said was, well, this became a helpful discipleship tool for people fighting sin and pursuing righteousness. And so to the degree you use those pyramids as like, hey, this is a helpful discipleship tool, that could be helpful. It starts to become a problem, I think, perhaps, if you're saying this is what Jesus meant.
Yes.
So
yeah, the idea that
it doesn't mean you can't learn from it, but we do want to try to be clear, like, well, what did Jesus mean? What does the Bible say? What does it mean?
Totally. And this is where I'm sympathetic to Dallas Willard's interpretation of this, where he says like the goal of this is just that everyone would feel welcomed without exception. But I do think that's not the point of the Sermon on the Mount, because he makes you feel like a nothing burger pretty quick on there. I think the main thrust and purpose of the Sermon on the Mount is for Jesus to say, you have heard it said, be really righteous.
So you're talking about the whole sermon. So now chapters 5 to 7, of which this is the very beginning. Yeah,
the whole Sermon on the Mount, including the Beatitudes, is Jesus is basically saying, you have heard it said, be super holy or you won't get in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus is saying, yes, but the standard is higher than you ever thought. It's higher than the Pharisees thought. It's higher than the scribes thought. You have no chance, period, of pulling this off. that you have been building your houses on the sand. And the sand is your own attempts at righteousness. You've been building your house on the sand. And the sand is worldly approaches to success and meaning and purpose. You've been building your house on the sand. And the sand is trying to please the Pharisees and religious leaders. And I'm telling you, you build your house on the rock. And the rock is Christ.
So that sounds like the Lutheran understanding.
And here's where I think the Lutheran understanding falls short.
Okay.
Is yes, you read this, you're cut to the heart. You realize there's no hope for me. I need Christ. And then you go, here's where the Reformation tradition I think is really helpful here, is you go, who perfectly did all this? The Lord Jesus. That when I rightly understand, blessed are the merciful, I'm going to understand that as most preeminently and perfectly embodied in the person of Jesus. Who's the greatest peacemaker? Who's the purest of heart? Who's the one who mourned, who absolutely righteously mourned suffering and sin, not his own, but the sins of others. Like he grieved over other people's sin, not just own. He had no worldly sorrow, which is, whoops, I got caught, now I'm sad. But he had this grieved, at the heart of God is grieved. Like he's grieving sin, not his own, but he's grieving that the heart of God is wounded by sin. And so when you see that Jesus perfectly fulfills all that he asks us to do, and I now have the Spirit of Christ, and I should endeavor to go and kind of do what Gregory of Nyssa said, is like, now go be like Jesus, do my best to be like him, not in order to attain, but because I have attained, not in order to receive, but because I have received. So I think that there's a sense in which they're all right, but the Reformed one I think is the most right. Dallas Willard saying everyone is welcome. That's the point of this. I'm like, well, I think that's a true reality. I'm not sure that's the point of this. The Lutherans saying this is designed to make you feel bad so that you turn to Christ. I don't know if Lutherans would hate the way I'm summarizing that or not, but I'm sure they would. I go like, sure, on the one hand, that's like the law as the teacher that teaches you you're not good enough. That's great. But I think this, what the Reformed tradition calls the third use of the law, which is it convicts you of sin, it restrains your unrighteousness, and the third way, it teaches you how God actually wants you to live. Not as a means of earning righteousness, but because I've been made righteous. This is like the you're a saint, now live like a saint. So I think we should read the Beatitudes as going, be like this, I'm not, Christ is, and now with his help, work towards being like this, which seems kind of the most obvious way to read this text when I think about the way I understand the Bible works and how I understand the gospel works. And so I think they're approximating different ways of doing that. I also think there's a sense in which, like the culmination of this being, blessed are you when other people persecute you for righteousness, there is like a foundation of humility that's building towards sharing in the sufferings of Christ. So I think there is something there that's in the progression, like we grow on, these build on top of each other.
Well, part of what's so interesting about it is that Jesus isn't saying, be poor in spirit so that you'll inherit the kingdom of God.
Yes.
None of these are commands, right? These are all just declarative, not imperatives, indicatives.
Yeah.
Right? This is what's true. This is who's blessed. This is what's right. So it's like, it's nowhere is it even telling you here's what to do. It's just saying this is what is.
Yeah, and if you want to know,
this is the truly blessed life.
Yeah, and if you want to know if you want to become poor in spirit, read the rest of this sermon, because you'll become poor in spirit if you really get it.
Yeah.
I got nothing. Nothing in my hand I bring, simply to the cross I cling.
Yeah.
And guess what? When you find yourself there, yours is the kingdom. That's great. Blessed are those who mourn. I need to grieve over my sin. Do you know how I get that?
Listen to the rest of the sermon.
Listen to the rest of the sermon. I'm going to start to be like, I feel sad that I'm so unlike God.
Yeah.
And guess what? When you get there, you'll be comforted. And so I do think these blessed statements are mostly describing symptoms.
Yeah. And there I go, well, that just sounds like Jesus is doing a good sermon introduction.
Yeah. Yeah. So these
He's
first
giving
phrases,
you a little roadmap of here's what the rest of the sermon's going to be.
Yeah. I think these first phrases, they're not really commands, but they are describing the symptoms of people who have done business with God.
Yeah.
And when you really encounter the Lord, when you really sit under his teaching, when you really recognize your need, you eventually become these things.
Mm-hmm.
So these are symptomatic, and here's what those symptoms mean.
Yeah.
And so I think it's best to understand that when I really get to know Jesus, when I really listen to his word, I'll go, that's compelling and I want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Yeah.
And then I'll be satisfied. So it's not if I want satisfaction manifest out of nowhere some desire for righteousness. Like appetites don't work like that. I can't just decide to like pico de gallo because it's awful tasting. It's like onions and tomatoes, like the two worst flavors. But symptomatically, I could acquire that taste over time if I spend enough time in Mexican restaurants. You know what I mean? But it's these acquired tastes. And so I think reading the first part as a symptom and reading the second part as a promised blessing that's downstream from that symptom is an idea. But this is why the privileged life.
This is why we wanted to do this series, right? The whole theme of this year's preaching is the good life. Help us to pursue the truly good life in Jesus. And it's like going, well, what if there was a spot in the Bible where Jesus said, here's the good life.
Yes.
Here's the blessed life. Here's the lucky life. Here's the fortunate life. Here's the this will make you happy life. And so we're like, hey, this kind of sounds like it. So that's how we picked this, and it'll be fun to go through.
Yeah, and my hope is that, especially those people who on the surface just immediately identify with poor, grieving, weak, hungry, taken advantage of, single-minded bridge builders, that they would recognize that the world does not value these things because they don't create worldly success.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, they uncreate worldly success.
Yeah.
And when we operate on the timeline of eternity, we start to see that maybe the way I'm counting my profits and losses is out of whack.
Yeah, people have described the kingdom of God being a kind of upside down kingdom.
Yes.
And that's certainly, if the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' vision for the kingdom, then he's, at least here, he's going, hey, this is different than you thought. It's upside down from how you've typically thought of this.
Yeah. And just the backwardsness of it all is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Rejoice and be glad when people do kinds of evil and all kinds of evil and bear false witness against you.
Right.
What are you talking about? Again, and it's so counterintuitive. It's so upside down. It's so backwards. But that's, I think, part of the mystery and beauty of Jesus is when you're with him, you'll start to understand and agree with these things. Because I think on the surface, we might believe them, but we don't agree with them. I go well, Jesus said it, so I believe it. But I kind of don't agree.
It's that's probably true for people.
Yeah.
But when I'm in that situation, I don't know. It sure doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, for sure. Because it sounds like rejoice and be glad when that person who's persecuting you gets hit by a bus.
Right.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
That seems like the more obvious thing. And so I think he's undermining our assumptions about what makes for a happy, fortunate, blessed life. And I think that's one thing we for sure know about our culture is everyone's pursuing happiness and people are not happy. And so clearly we're shooting at a target. We've misunderstood where the bullseye is. And hopefully we'll get a better picture of what the bullseye is and that it'll make us a happier people. And I mean that in the most biblical sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of my hopes too for the series is we're in a space here in, the Southeast Valley where it's there's a lot of politically conservative people, socially conservative people. And there's been a bit of a, what people call the vibe shift, this kind of hey, that side of the cultural dynamic feels like it's on the upswing. And even there, you kind of go well, the blessed life is we're going to win.
Yeah, political majority.
Yeah, the best life is we're going to, always get our way culturally. And so I do think there's even though I find myself on that side of the aisle and on that side of the cultural issues, I, more than that, want to be a Jesus person that goes, whatever Jesus says is winning. Whatever Jesus says is the good life. That's actually the good life. And if that happens to contradict what the politics or the cultural look at things says, then, well, I'm going to go with Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, just yesterday, there's that Chicago Bulls player who critiqued Pride Month.
Right.
He said, Pride Month is a celebration of unrighteousness, and I'm not about it.
And he was dismissed from the team for conduct unbecoming of the team or something, which you go like, wow, the vibe shift, I guess, isn't
that strong.
Yeah,
but he's going to lose millions of dollars probably.
Yeah.
And the hypocrisy of that, because how many NBA players are, wife beaters and gambling addicts, and they do stuff that's actually detrimental to like the team, but they're like, oh, we'll accommodate it because, so you see that what the world calls unrighteous, or what is righteous, what the world calls unrighteous, we call righteous. And there's just the double standard, or the wrongness of standard is there. But, talk to this man and go, blessed are you, for you're persecuted and reviled. Oh, he's reviled all over the place. The whole internet, at least before I recorded this, was reviling him. And you go, blessed are you. And in an earthly material sense, is he? But in eternal spiritual sense, is he? And
right.
And I think the answer on the second one is obviously yes.
Yeah, sure.
And how that exactly play out, I'm not sure. But that's just a great example of until you're willing to put it on the line to identify with Christ, you're untested at least.
Do you have any other hopes for this series for our church?
I hope that we are people who are known for having poverty of spirit. I hope that Ironwood Church's brand is meekness, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, merciful, pure in heart. Like there's a lot of church brands that all like you associate it with something. Like how great it would be if we were that church with peacemakers, pure at heart, merciful, hungry for righteousness, poor in spirit, happy.
And yet if we were, we wouldn't really care about our brand.
Yeah. And I use the word brand there tongue in cheek.
No, I know what you mean.
I hope that our friends and neighbors go, oh, that's the place with those hungry for righteousness people. And
that feels like Jesus.
Yeah. And we go, I don't care that you think that because I'm hungry and thirsty for righteousness. I'm not hungry and thirsty for your approval of my hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Right, sure.
But that self-forgetfulness that would come from that would be freeing.
Yeah.
And I hope that all of those, like the when I think about the purgative, illuminative, and unitive stages, and I don't like the word unitive, which is totally fine.
No, you're good.
But it's just the freedom that I think our church would feel if we really leaned in and through that purgative stage to really grieve our sin, to really be poor in spirit, and then begin to illuminate towards real hunger and thirst for righteousness over and above any other appetite. Like we'd have freedom because we wouldn't be pulled. We wouldn't have that tension, and that would be the blessed life.
Right.
And so,
sure.
And I think there's this tendency to be like 2/3 in on Christ. And I think we experience the blessed life, the happy life, the fortunate, the privileged life once we go from 2/3 in on to all in on hunger and thirst for righteousness. Yeah. So that's my hope for me and for us.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking it'll be a good series. Appreciate y'all listening, and we'll see you next time.